Hi, welcome to Flory Models. I'm Flory. Okay, part 5 of the Star Destroyer is up now. As you can see, slightly behind where I wanted to be. We've had accountants and things this week, being the end of the tax year, so haven't really got on as far as I wanted to go. But certainly, as you can see, it is in a hole. Now, you can probably see around the top here, we've got various fillers and putties and thin putties. This is purely to take care of any light leaks we had. Now we've done it black on the inside, completely round the top and everything else now, but everything is actually complete and wired in. So what we've got to do is do a little bit of filler work around the top neck here just to take care of any light leaks around there, and then that is completed and it's done and it's ready for painting and everything else. I've installed a dimmer switch system into it. I spoke about before, I think in part 4. It's on a remote control. I've really got to wire it up and test it to put it all in, but basically, as you can see, we're to a point here where we're almost ready to get going with paint. So what it's going to have is a big old black coat of paint right the way over absolutely everything. Again, it's just making it light safe, so we've got no light bleeding through anywhere. And then what we can do is actually then start to put down the grey. Then we're going to work the way through, because we're going to do lots of different weathering techniques with this one. Obviously, we're going to mask up all these individual panels all over it, absolutely everywhere, and different shades and hues, so it would be lightening, darkening, everything else as we go through there. So it is going to be literally about sort of 5 or 6 different greys going down on this one. Then we're going to do a little bit of dry brushing just to liven up around these edges, on these little areas around the front where there's lots of detail, really just to bring them to life. Then certainly we can seal this down. Then it's going to have a wash right the way over it completely, and everything else. So there we go. Really, it's coming together and getting to sort of, yeah, what I call the nice bit of actually, you know, when you're going through and doing everything else. A couple of questions came up about it through the various sources. First of all, got to mention, one of the guys, sorry I forgot your name, said about, obviously I'm using resisted LEDs and things like that. I ought to point out that if you don't have resistors, they don't last that long. So, quite correct. You might be able to see just down here, one of our cameras, all right, you can see I've got a little lump down in the middle here. This is a resistor, so the current going through this, or the electrical flow, keeping it really simple, is constant. Okay, it's making sure it doesn't suddenly get really, you know, too much going through, which makes them really bright, dull down everything else. So this way, because it's got a resistor, that light is constant all the time, no matter what. But if you're not using them with resistors on and things like that, what can happen is they can burn out. Okay, so that is the thing. The other thing to mention is all the stripping I use. If I can find one, there we go. We've got one down here. If you look for them, you'll get these little blocks. Okay, every now between each one of the cut, you'll get them. Again, it actually says on there, no it doesn't, it just says 111. That is a resistor as well. So the strip is completely done. Things to look out for is that you don't have a resistor, you know, going on a cable going in something like this. Okay, then you end up cutting it and then you don't have a resistor on it, because again, what can happen is you can burn out the LEDs, which is a very good point brought up by whoever it was. A big thank you for mentioning it. It's one of those things, you hear it once and you forget that you know, it's sort of something you just do automatically. So just make sure it has got a resistor on. Most of the stripping I have seen in the last sort of 6 months of getting hold of this stuff and various other projects I've done with it has got resistors on there to stop it from burning out and everything else like that. But just make sure, have a look at it. If you're buying them off of eBay, I bought these as 10mm and 5mm LEDs with the actual resistor put on already, so it's not something I've done, it just had them in there. So as I say, just look out for them, because you can just buy a straightforward LED which won't have a resistor on it. If it hasn't got a resistor on it, they can burn out, you know. So, and if you do it on something like this where you've spent God knows how long putting all this together, okay, to get it into a position where you're like, right, okay, good to go now, and then all of a sudden you start losing LEDs very quickly over the next few months, to the point where you're like hardly got any working and it's not worth having all the LEDs on. There was not a lot of point putting lights into it anyway. So just make sure you've got those on as you make your way through. But as I said, part 5's up. Really, that's covering, can't remember what it's covering now. Certainly working with the LEDs, putting all the LED strips and lighting in there and everything else. Going around the way I've actually put this sort of system, I've got plasticard now reinforcing it all on the inside. Plasticard that runs up on the inside, so it's sort of making a very similar shape to this going up with all the LEDs. So each level has its own LEDs. So as you say, this bottom layer has one, then the mid one, then the next one up. This one's got its own one, this one at the top, and then obviously the back of the actual bridge as it comes up to the bridge area of the ship itself have got their own LEDs. So it's not like you're going to be fading off and they're not as strong there as they are down there and things like that. And then obviously you've got LEDs running all around the front. The engines are obviously all LEDs at the back and everything else. It's not glued together yet completely. It's literally this entire top section's together. It's just the bottom eggs. What we're going to do is paint it, then install the LEDs for the engines at the rear. You probably see on the part this weighs so much, it's so heavy, but those LEDs all got to go in there. It's halfway painted up here at the back, but it's got to have a little bit more done. Then the LEDs can all go into that, and then eventually what we can do is spray it. But what we want to do is halfway do all the work to it, so I still can get into the internals as we make our way around and everything else like that. So there we go, that's covered our LEDs. Other question we had about the cutting mats. I use A2 cutting mats. Again, to be honest, off of eBay, you can't sometimes beat the price. Obviously, the other one as well, I got the one on the other side, this green one over here, came from one of those cheapo sort of pound places that do cheap books and things like that, stores. Got that one in there and it was £1. So absolute bargain. I've got another one over here, the blue one. You've probably seen when the angle's on the other direction for that position over there. And that one came from our actual Creative Models, got to think of it. They sell them as well. But if you want to get them on the cheap, get them off of eBay rather than going to a store, because you'll pay extra in the stores for them, things like that. Or as I say, if you can get them in, it's a bit like disposable rubber gloves when you're spraying. Trust me, you're getting down the market for a couple of quid versus you buy them online, they cost an absolute fortune. So it's just a case of, you know, keeping out there and finding all the areas where you can get things a little bit cheaper, especially if it's consumable. Like me, I go through cutting mats every couple of months and I tend to have a nice clean one. This one's getting a bit grubby now, so I'll probably be switching this one soon. So, you know, it looks nice on film, things like that, rather than sort of practicalities of it. You can also get them with nice shapes. This one on the underside has got it, to be honest, under here, I can't turn it over, but it's got all different shapes and showing you the geometrics from them, obviously your percentages and things like that. So all your different angles and that. I think there's the American star under here as well and things like that. So it's quite handy for working various shapes out. This is just the standard one, 1 centimetre, so you can work out roughly the size of everything as it sits on here. So there we go. Okay, Star Destroyer, things like that. Next up, we've got the review of a rebox of the Revell one. It's just a little bit updated and everything else like that. So this is the review of the Hawker Hunter FGA 9/Mark 58. Hi, welcome to Flory Models review time. A bit of an old favourite of mine. This is the Revell 132nd Hawker Hunter. This is the FGA 9/58 kit, which is a upgraded version of the original F6 kit that came out in around about 1998, 1999 time. It's got a few extra sprues in there, things like that. Okay. To fix this up, the F6 is the fighter version of this particular one. This is the FGA 9, which in layman's terms, from the point of view, it became a ground attack aircraft, like most of the aircraft in those days did. Started off as a fighter, and then obviously as roles changed and things developed, better weaponry, slight differences. The tailplane is different. That's been upgraded on this one, and the exhaust pipe at the end, or the fairing round the exhaust pipe for the engine as well, the nozzle, that's different. That's really the main differences to it. Also, this confusion about FGA 9 Mark 58. Basically, FGA is fighter ground attack, this is obviously 9th. MK58 was the export number given to these. In those days, I think most of the aircraft were given a 2-digit code. So this one is 58, which just means it's the export version, which pretty much went everywhere, I think, back in the day. This kit depicts the ones going to the Swiss. So, and that's it. So, in the box, which we haven't opened, so let's have a look. Now, I know this kit because I've done the F6 version, but I certainly haven't done this one. Okay, and as I say, it's the F6 kit is an absolute gem. As you can see, nice bit of box art on the front. Then in the kit, with the box open, it's stuck down there still. We have, quite slipping around in here, a few bits different. Immediately, I'm wondering if that is the ones. Okay, now I built this kit quite a long time ago, if we're honest. Let me just poke this out of the way. And I don't remember it that well. What I remember is it went together extremely nicely, and it's a nice big aircraft. The Hunter is just one of those aircrafts, a bit like the Meteor we reviewed recently, the HK Models one. It looks fantastic on a stand. And I did this particular one, or the F6 kit, in Misdemeanor's colours. If you haven't seen it, it's the one that's basically a planet from the outside. Very famous British Hunter. It's privately owned now and flies around the UK circuit, but it was a great job to spray it and do it all in this particular scale. So in the booklet, usual thing, got a little bit of thing about it in England, saying about what we said about just a moment ago, and then off into it. The usual Revell way of doing things. So your obligatory, all your stuff down here. Colour callouts, as we know, is that Revell format, which drives everybody mad. Okay, so going in, as we remember, it's straight into the seat. Again, it's one of those kits that would nicely do with an aftermarket resin one, if I'm honest. So it might be worth spending a couple of quid buying an aftermarket resin seat for it, because you really do see it in these kits. They tend to be very dark and dingy inside because the colours are black in there, as is that era. But putting a nice seat in there with some nice cushions, things like that on there, and some nice harnesses really does do this kit justice. Anyway, back in. You will get differences, because one of the differences is here, where you've got the Fdr Mark 9 cockpit and the export version are different. Okay, so that is one of the differences that you will see in there. Pretty much the rest of it should go together as is. So cockpit going through, as you can imagine. I don't think they ever did do a two-seat version of this. There's conversion kits out there, but it would be nice if they did. And because it had the separate front end on it, everybody expected it to come out at some point, but it never did. So if you're listening, Revell, please bring it out, because I'll build that one all day long. Okay, so usual thing, going right the way through. You've got this situation where it comes in, you don't really see it, if we're honest, with all these different parts going in that make up the intake going down in there. Don't forget your nose weight. It says 40 grams, always go more, so I would easily put 50 grams in there just to make sure, because the worst thing that can happen is it'd be a tail sitter. So please don't forget your nose weight in there. Okay, and then going in through the back end, so putting the back end together, opening up some little marks for the Swiss version versus the RAF. Again, the drilling out the location points between the Swiss one and the UK version are slightly different. And then going right the way through, putting the wingtips on. So the slats on the front and those flaps at the back, as I say, they're slightly different on this kit than they are on the F6 kit. Okay, and then it's all coming together. This is one thing that's totally different, is this tail area, as I say, the tailpipe. It's different on the FGR 9 to it is the F6 one, so that's one of the big differences. The tailplanes are different as well, as we pointed out. And then going right the way through, you've got weight on wheels, which is a nice touch with these kits, or obviously you can do it gear up. Same with the main gear, it's lovely and detailed, it's quite a nice fix on those and everything else. Alright, going through, you've got the speed brake underneath, obviously you can have it open or closed. You've got the little skid protector in case you hit the back end as you're coming down. Some of the aerials going on, obviously top and bottom. Again, making sure you get the right ones for the right mark you're doing. Okay, the Swiss one was where it's slightly different as well. We've got the export version has these sensors on the nose, because the weaponry had changed that much that you've got warning radar receivers and things like that on these. Again, coming through, just keeping an eye on all those ones you do. The weapons fit, so you've got rockets right the way down here and fuel tanks. Again, and this is where it's totally different. The Swiss version carried the Maverick, which was obviously looked a bit odd hanging on a classic aircraft with a mod missile, but it did was capable of carrying the Maverick missile. Okay, so obviously for those going on for those ones, UK one didn't. Okay, right the way through, you can put on obviously whatever ones you like. Is that a practice bomb load? Don't know. To see what that is. Right the way through, as I say, it's mainly the ones for the Swiss ones there. Markings, as you can imagine, 1963, we've got number 1 squadron. There's plenty of little stencil data, which is quite a nice touch. Okay, and then again, some nice call outs here showing all those different ones on there. And then you've got for the Swiss ones, so we've got the 21 Elman or Emmen Air Force Base 94. I thought there was more markings on that actually. I didn't think it was just the 2. I thought we'd have more in there, but obviously it's just calling out for the 2, which is a bit of a shame. I thought there was definitely more on there. But as you can see, nice call outs for all the stencil data, especially on the Swiss one and everything else like that, and for the missiles and everything else as you go right the way through. So, quick look at the decals. Again, they tend to be pretty good these days. They tend to have that nice balance of being a satin finish rather than dead flat, as Airfix are doing recently, or glossy. But as you can see, some very nice decals there, some nice ones you can actually do, some nice markings, plenty of stencil data which will really liven it up and make it look very, very nice indeed. So, the kit itself. Okay, this is the fun bit. So, are these taped? Should be taped, is it the old days? Yeah. As you can imagine, it's not a new kit, but it's not too old either. So it's that, what I call the first generation, the late 90s, where the kits suddenly became really good. We've got this classic tail. As I say, I don't know how it works. Very crisp, very hard styrene. Okay, I don't know which camera will be the best one for this, but what you do have is very finely engraved recessed panel lining. In some ways, it's too fine, and I know you shouldn't say that ever on a kit. But it's, by the time you've given it primer, and if you're weathering it, you've gone around and pre-shaded, post-shaded, the colours going on, bleached out, things like that. Then you've decaled, and then you've obviously glossed again, and decaling and everything else like that. When you come to put a wash on it, you've almost lost them all, okay? So sometimes it's worth popping around with a blade, but they are very fine, very nice, very crisp. Okay, you don't have anything on the inside, and you don't have any options for doing the brake on it either. Those we'll look at in a moment. Main cockpit, as you see, so you do get some nice detail. Hopefully you can see down here in these wells, things like that. The actual cockpit itself, quite nicely detailed. Going through the nose, okay, and the gun vents, they are completely bunged up, so you might want to drill those out. Nice little thing. So you can literally come in here, drill these little guys out, okay, and that'll give you a far better looking one. Front end of the cockpit, there's no internal detail to it. This guy here, there's a couple of ejector pin marks. If I remember last time, you need to just sand them flush. You don't see them, but it'll just make the cockpit feel a lot better. Okay, and then, as you can see, it's not too bad. You've got the dials here. We should end up with another dial because you do get different ones for the instrument panel at the front. But this particular bit is exactly the same as the F6. I'm going it down in there. So, big old bag here, all in one bag. Nice to see them separately bagged, or if not, at least these are stuck in particularly well. So as you can see, we've got a couple of parts rattling around in here, and this is why. So luckily for us, as you can see, this is one of those areas. Opened up the bag, I've got bits floating around in here. Be careful they don't come out the air holes and everything else, but down here we've got itself is the nozzle and one of the little warning receivers. But always check your bag before you bin it, because how many times have I been through the bin and then found it in there. The nozzle itself, as I said, there's not a great deal to it. If we just drop this side cam in a little bit, but you can probably see there's nothing really to it going down in there. Okay, we've got this little guy here, which is a little warning receiver guy. Excuse me. Okay, the wings, again, lovely fine recessed detail. Okay, it's extremely smooth, extremely shiny. So if you're doing it in like metal finishes and stuff like that, it's great because it's got a nice set to it. Okay, now I'm just looking out for, it'll be that one over there. It looks like the tailplanes are the same. I thought they were different. Could be wrong. As I say, I haven't done my homework on this one, but hopefully you can see, very, very nice, very crisp, nicely done riveting detail, very nicely done. The control surfaces unfortunately are moulded in apart from the flaps, so you can't move them. You've got a little bit of detail on the insides of these, which is quite nice, so it's nice and scratchy, so it'll take a wash nicely. Got the date there we go, so it is 1998 on this one. So, and everything else, there's your holes for opening up. Okay, if you're doing the different versions and variants down in there. Again, it's a big old sprue, but it's beautifully done. It's very nice, it's very crisp. This is one of the newer sprues, so this will be for the then the 58 version. So you've got a different instrument panel in here. okay, which is this guy here. Then you've obviously got the Maverick missiles, which we were saying about, different fuel tanks. These are all these warning receivers and sensors and everything else that go onto it. The slightly different pylons and everything else. So this sprue is for the F-58, for the Swiss one. Okay. This will be for the RAF one, which is what came with the F6, if I remember correctly. Okay, so you've just got your gear. It's quite nicely done. You've got some nice detail on this gear. Hopefully you can see some nice plumbing and wiring, which you can just liven up and everything else. A little bit of care, a little bit of attention with this, it can really come to life. But generally, it's a bargain kit as well. For the money, you get a lot of detail in this. This is the other new sprue for this particular one. So this is where we can point things out. So as you say, you've got different flaps on these, which unfortunately we have got a few ejector pin marks we're going to have to take care of in there. Okay. Or you might be able to leave them and get away with them, but as we know, those three there shouldn't be there. These obviously down the bottom all are, but those three aren't. The intakes themselves, you don't have to worry too much. There is ejector pin marks in them, which are a bit of a pain, but quite frankly, you know, by the time you've got it all buttoned up, you're not going to see it. Okay, there's those leading edge slats on the front, okay, and the pylons and everything else. But as you can see, it's nice, crisp, sharp boxes. Just have a look at the clear parts. Get them out of the bag. Okay, so when you're looking at these, I said this last time, well, as I say, I wasn't doing reviews back then, but certainly there's no, I don't know, it's not brilliant. It's sort of showing its age. I don't know how well the camera will pick this up, but we've got puckering, and I don't know if it's on this one, but I do remember it on the old one. Okay. But you might be able to see on this edge area down here, you've got like it's almost like a mottly into the plastic itself. As I say, I don't know how well the camera will get it, so I'm sort of guessworking, but it's this lower area all down here. Okay, and if we come in too far, the camera will have a fit, but you may be able to catch it, which is a real shame. And if you look through, you've got plenty of distortion going on. Obviously the front ones are okay, but generally it's just not a nice canopy. Now there is, or was, aftermarket ones available for this one in vac form. I don't know if they still are, but back in the day I must admit I had an aftermarket vac form one. But there we go, it's a little bit of a weak point in the kit, but again, it's an absolute bargain of a kit. It's well worth its money. It makes a very, very nice model. If I remember rightly, it's about this big. Okay, and I've done mine in flight on a display stand as well, and it absolutely looks cracking like that. It's one of those sort of all-time sort of lovely jets. It's got nice clean lines as everything did back then, so it looks absolutely fantastic. Really, really highly recommended. It's a straightforward kit, goes together very, very well. Yes, you've got plenty of seam lines to take care of. Yes, you are going to get the filler out, but generally that's just to sort of get rid of any imperfections. Apart from that, it is a beautiful kit to do. So go out and get one. As I said, I built that kit in its previous guise as the F6. It's a lovely kit. It's one of those ones, I think it's, I can't remember what it is now, I haven't seen it. It's about 20 quid the kit. It's an absolute bargain. You get such a big model for, you know, you think. And if you ever want to do an in-flight one, the Hunter lends itself particularly well to doing that. But as I said, it's a beautiful aircraft, totally classic. If you're not interested in those markings for it, trust me, go online. There's aftermarket decals for this and some striking schemes as well, and everything else. So it's one of those sort of, you know, kits. It's such a good price. You can't sort of fail not to have one if you're into this type of thing. So if you're into Cold War, early jets, things like that, then the Hunter is definitely one to do. Okay, so keep an eye out for that kit. Okay, group builds. Yes, we're going to add another month onto the group build, purely because I'm not going to finish either. That makes that easy, because I've got a few other jobs and projects I've got to get on with, especially over Easter. I've got to do a few Hawks and everything else, so it's probably going to take me a little bit longer, so I won't be able to get back onto this until Tuesday. So consequently, I'm probably going to run out of time, like a lot of you, and I think I make it up to around about 25 people who have mentioned it now. You need an extra month, so we're going to extend the deadline from it's obviously going to be the end of this month to the end of May. Don't panic, because that's still, we normally have a month's gap between the group builds. So the next group build after that, we're going to start on the 6th of June to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the D-Day landings. Okay, so that is going to be our next group build. Full details of that will go up shortly onto the forum. and everything else. So it is going to be Operation Overlord. As I say, there's lots of things we're going to be doing about that one and moving its way through. As we talk about that one, on the 5th of June, we've got Dave Bedswicks hosting this one, and it is the post-apocalyptic vehicle mayhem SIG. Okay, so think Mad Max. You know, that's the easiest way to this. This is where you take any vehicle you like and you can do anything you like to it in that sort of post-apocalyptic world of, like, you know, mayhem, of literally of putting things like bull bars on, razor blades, whatever you like, cannons, onto your actual vehicle itself. So, you know, literally, you know, there is no ruling on this of what it can be. You can do anything you like on this one, as long as it's a vehicle and it's been modified in some way to survive after, you know, a meltdown. So that one's going to start on the 5th of June. 26th of June, we've got the 100th anniversary of the Great War. This is the First World War, so there's going to be a SIG running for that one as well. I don't know if they're out yet. There is some World War I tanks coming out in 1/35th scale, I do believe, unless I'm just dropping myself in it nicely, but I was told they are on the way. I'm not sure if they're out yet. I'll try and get hold of them and do a review on them if they are even out. So there's plenty of things to go on for that one as well. So, as you say, stay tuned to these. Okay, and really that's about it for this week. Sorry it's a really short show, especially because we've been having them sort of an hour and a half and everything else like that, so a little bit shorter this week, but we'll certainly be on the ball next week, the week after, things like that. So we're going to leave you with a build that I've been following in the forum, which is one of those ones you sort of, you know, you think, God, that's a lot of work, and people say this is a lot of work, not when it's compared to this one. So I'm going to leave you with Steve Mcewan has done the 1/64th scale in wood of the Mayflower vessel. Okay, so it's one of those kits where unbelievable amount of prep work goes into it, and you know, the rigging and things like that, especially, you know, obviously being a tall ship, and it's one of those sort of mind-boggling things, the amount of hidden things that you probably don't even know are going to go on. So hopefully these photos will give you an idea of it going through. Remember, all these builds that you're seeing are available on the forum as full complete works, with descriptions and obviously answering questions from the members who put them up, because I know a lot of you have asked me about questions on them and I've sort of directed you to where they are. Obviously you have to be a member, that's your drawback. Okay, so this is it. So I'm going to leave you now. Until then, everybody have a happy Easter, because obviously Easter is with us. I hope you get a little bit of time off and get plenty of modelling done. Hopefully I will, although I don't get a day off. But anyway, so until next week, everybody, happy modelling and take care.